Good morning, readers. Today for our reading workshop mini lesson, you're going to need your notebook, glue stick, pencil, and your green folder. So in your folder today should be inside of your anchor binder. Remember, yours is not taken out. It is just taken out from mine so I can show you the folder that we need. Open up to your left pocket, which is going to house your reading resources, teach pages for this notebook. We are going to look through and we are going to find, it should be about the fourth one back, the page that says at the top, written response rubric, and on the right, evidence-based terms. This is the only sheet that we're going to need today. Then you can close your green folder within your anchor binder and tuck that back into your basket. Open up your reader's notebook to today's table of contents. So yesterday we worked on real versus fake reading and our timeline as a reader. Remember, the timeline as a reader should be something that you continue to work on a little bit yesterday, a little bit today, and then you're going to take a finalized, completed picture of your timeline to submit to me on Friday by the end of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and turn back. This was yesterday's work, our WOW reading page, and then our timeline on page 16. We're going to turn to page 17, which is the back of the timeline, and put a 17 on the left and an 18 on the top right. Once you have labeled your two pages, we're going to go back to the table of contents to write today's mini lesson title. So we're going to write number 17. And this is going to be focusing on how can we write a 4-star response. So today's title is 4-star response, and it's on 8/27-20. Remember, at any point you can pause your video so you can get yourself caught up and then push play when you're ready to start the lesson. I'm going to turn back to page 17 where we just recorded this lesson is going to start on. I'm going to put my notes. These are just some helpful guides that will review about what goes into a 4-star response and why that's going to be important for us to have as a reference. So go ahead and glue the back, flip it over, make sure it's nice and smooth down. And then I'm going to also, at the top, write the title from our table of contents. So we said this is called our 4-star response. So when we talk about 4-star response, this is our way to ensure that we're putting enough thought and detail into our writing when we respond to what we have read on our own. That way we can show that we're understanding our characters, what the author's intent is to the reading that we are doing that day, and we're able to portray that in a thought-provoking manner. So on the left, on our teach page, you will see a copy of an anchor chart. It says a written response rubric, and it gives you some ideas of what to follow for each of these stars. So for the first one at the bottom, I'm going to put a little 1 star to say, well, this is kind of like a basic response. If you were asked to tell me about the book that you read on Epic for your independent reading, if your response only answers the question that I give you, but it doesn't answer or does not use the question in the answer, meaning you're not making it into a complete sentence, or any words from the text, so you're not giving me specific text evidence, that's what we call, that's a really basic response. That's not what we would see in our 4th graders, so we would only give that 1 star to say, we could probably do better. A 2-star response, so I'm going to put 2 stars next to it. This is when a student restates the question and the answer. So you use the question as part of your stem to begin your own sentence. And you answer the question, and you may or may not have words from the text. So there is maybe a little bit of text evidence. You're telling me some of the specific things the author has written down, but there's still not much to it. So not so meaty yet. Moving up to maybe something that you have been used to in the past in a younger grade could be almost like a 3-star response. And this could be where you did restate the question in your answer. You did answer your question using words from the text, but you only give me one detail from the story using that text evidence. So you're doing a great job. We just want to make sure that as fourth graders, we're going to give our reader a little bit more. So we are this year aiming for a 4-star response. And this is based on your independent or individual books. So when you are asked to write a response based on what you've read, if you want to get top points, you need to make sure that you're restating the question in your answer, so using it as your stem. You're answering the question using words from the text, and then you give at least 2 details, so 2+ details from the story using the text evidence. So the last part just says uses proper capitalization and punctuation in those sentences. So this is just a little version of the anchor chart that we would have up in our room. So I wanted to have that as a reference. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail on our right page in just a moment. The next reference box is evidence-based terms. So these are our sentence stems. So some of our sentence stems are going to be how do we provide the specific text evidence. So right above the word evidence, I'm going to put the word text, because we will see that as writers this year, we are developing our writing to include more detail, but showing our thinking based on what the author has provided. So as we've talked about this year in fourth grade, we take the FSA writing. So we will be spending a lot of time on gathering evidence and facts and information we can use for an opinion to include in our actual writing about what we've just read. So look through these examples of some of the ways that we might start the sentence to show the text evidence that supports our answer to the question. And then at the bottom, this is an example of what we call a 3-star response. So go ahead and circle that. 3-star response means it's not the top points yet. That's just showing us maybe what we have been used to in the past in third grade. So a constructed response with the text evidence. So we see a sample question, and it says, what kind of person was Mike? So the first sentence, you can see, they said Mike was greedy and selfish. Well, what kind of person was he? We are told right there, we answer the question. But we know that that would be where we possibly get a 1-star if we left it there. But we added some more detail. He was greedy because he wouldn't share any of his belongings with his friends. That's evidence. The passage said that Mike grabbed his football away from his friend. If you notice, they have quotation marks, and I'm going to just circle those quotation marks because that is specific evidence-based terms, because I'm giving you the direct words from the author. And then I explain what the author meant by that quote. This means that he didn't want to share and was being selfish, so there was an explanation. So to get a 3-star grade, you would have had to answer the question, gave me some supporting details, give me evidence from the text, and an explanation. But the difference between a 3-star and trying to go for the 4-star is, for a 4-star, I would have had to do that twice by giving 2 details from the story using that text evidence, and then also provided with that second piece of text evidence an explanation of why that was important that the author included that in that particular story. So the difference between a 3 and a 4, 3, I only give 1 piece of text evidence with an explanation. A 4 would have been 2 pieces of specific text evidence with 2 explanations. So we're going to talk about how can we create our own anchor chart using a story that we've been reading together. So I'm going to once again put on the top of my page that we're still talking about a 4-star response. So I'm going to give you some information. So the first one we're going to do is maybe skip a line or 2, and then you're going to draw the 1-star. So we're going to give some examples. So I'm going to make a 2 columns. So the first is going to be the example from our book that we've been reading together, There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. And then this is just going to be an explanation. So we're going to put explanation. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to change pens that I use. So I'm going to use my purple to give the example, and then I'm going to change to a different color to explain. So an example of a one-star response is if I was asking you to describe our main character, Bradley. You could say that Bradley is mean. That's answering the question, but I'm not necessarily giving any specific information. I might also say that Bradley, so this is a second example, Bradley is talking to his animals. So this is an answer to a different question, but it's still giving me very basic information about who Bradley is or what he does in his spare time. The explanation part I'm going to write is, it doesn't say, so we're going to say it says what's in the book. And I basically just name a feeling. So it's very basic. It's not giving me any really insight into the characters, why the author is using the story the way they are, or my own feelings with it. So this is basically what we would call a one-star response. I'm going to use a highlighter, if you have one close by, to very carefully draw a line underneath the one star to separate it from my next example. So just like we did before, we're going to now draw 2 stars to show how we could have improved some of our information. So once again, we're using the same story that we all are reading together. There's a boy in the girls' bathroom. So this time a 2-star answer could have been, Bradley is mean when, so same answer, but I'm giving a little bit more, when he forces Jeff to give him $1. So we can see that this statement has improved because I'm giving a little bit more detail, but I'm not necessarily looking at the most information. I'm not looking at what I could explain or direct quotes from the text. Another example of a 2-star response could have been, I think Bradley is lonely because he is talking to his animals. So I gave a little bit more information, but I didn't give all of the information to make it a little bit better. So those are my 2 examples of a 2-star, but let's talk about why they were 2 stars. So yes, it makes a prediction. We also name a feeling with evidence. And I just talk about 1 page of the story. So I'm not giving real insight into my entire reading. I'm just looking at 1 page of information. So once again, we're going to take our highlighter and draw a very neat line to indicate we're separating our next star examples. The next one we're going to work on is how can we improve our answers even more than we had. So we're going to list an example, once again using the same story. This time we're going to write a little bit longer, so we're going to give 1 example. So we're going to write, when Jeff accepts the $1 back from Bradley, comma, he is offering Bradley a second chance, period. I think the author is trying to teach us about friendship and forgiveness. Period. So we can see that going from our 1-star to our 2-star, now to our 3-star, we have increasingly added more information. So information from the text, we're also giving some of our own thinking about why this information is going to be important. So let's go ahead and mark our explanation on this side. Remember, at any point during this, because you're doing writing by marking some examples, you can pause the video to catch up and then push play when you're ready to join me again. The first is it talks about a lesson. A lesson is something the author intends for us to learn through the actions of our characters or to apply to our own life. So we start talking about a lesson learned, which is going to then turn into a theme. The next is it names a pattern. So certain actions our characters take then start showing us that these things are a pattern in their behavior, or are able to compare one character to the other and how they possibly start switching personality traits. The next is makes predictions. Checks those predictions and we adjust them. Because as we read, we are oftentimes given new information that we might need to take into consideration when we have made that prediction of how we think a character is going to act in the future or what the event might be like in the future based on a previous understanding of who a character is. Because we are going to be developing our characters and how they change from the beginning of a story to the end of the story based on problems and their search for solutions. So the last one we're going to do is separate it first with our highlighter color nice and carefully. And then we're going to finish with our 4-star response. So in order to get the most amount of points possible, we're going to look at what is needed to earn the top score. So we're going to put our little line because once again, we're going to only use one example. So this time we're going to say in the beginning, of the book, Bradley is determined to hate everyone. Period. He has no friends and always sits alone. Period. When Jeff gives Bradley a chance, comma, Bradley slowly starts to care about Jeff, comma, even standing up for him in front of the girls. Period. And the last one is he's changing his attitude. Period. So we look at the progression of our character, and we give some insight about the actions that have resulted in this change within our character. So we're going to show the explanation on the right. This response notices changes. The next is it notices how they solve a problem. And it predicts why the character does something. So we have just looked at the difference between writing a very basic response for a 1 star, and then how we can slightly add more detail along the way until we get to what's the expectation in a 4th grade response for a 4-star response. So today you are going to be reading on Epic 15 minutes of uninterrupted independent reading time by picking a chapter book. You can continue a book that you've read in the past, but remember, it's new reading, it's not rereading. You have examples of what it means to be a 4-star writing using a rubric. You have some sentence stems you can use within your 4-star response. And you also see what a 3-star response looks like with the question and then the answer. Please make sure that when you submit your response today that you are aiming to have a 4-star response. Remember, good writers check for capitalization, punctuation, and make sure that they're looking for correct spelling.